So the course that we have created, that we are going to start today, is part of a pathway to CCI. That's why we call it a challenge series. So you can actually see that it will be a challenge, not in the sense that learning or anything, because it's actually going to be the simplest form you will see. We want to make sure that, and one of the things that I like to break any topic into as simple uh, logic or concept as possible. So it's not the challenge into learning anything, but the challenge yourself to set yourself on a new pathway to CCI, right? So let's see what exactly we are going to cover in this course, because this course is actually part of a bigger course which will go on for until we reach the CCI level. And of course, people can join for CCNA part or just for CCNP. CCNP also has an NRC and NCORE. They can join for a particular certification, or if they are already prepared enough, they join for the CCI level later. So let me explain you the complete structure, and then of course we will also go into detail of zero to CCNA specifically, which is the first part of it, right? So this is a complete program. Why? Because we start with CCNA. We call it zero to CCNA challenge. So it is going to be 12 weeks, and zero to CCNP later will be 12 weeks for NRC certification, and then NCORE certification also will be 12 weeks. So you can see that CCNP basically takes 24 weeks to complete, and after that comes the zero to lab, which is the CCI lab preparation course, and that is the very in-depth technological configuration, single protocols, multi-protocols labs, and that is another 24 weeks. So you can see it's actually almost 14, 15 months total program where you can join depending on what level you are in. So if somebody is already cleared CCNP, they can join the zero to lab portion later directly. If you are starting now completely zero on this, right, starting from the scratch, you can start from zero to CCNA, right? Now, what's unique about this approach that we are going to go through? So, there are few traits that you will see throughout the duration of this course. For example, there are some certain extent of this course which makes it perfect for getting you to that level that you need to go to not only pass the certifications but also to clear interviews and to become just more confident into day-to-day configuration of your routing and switching devices. The first thing is that we have live Zoom sessions with me where we cover in-depth concepts in the simplest way possible. Again, as I mentioned, I like to make sure that whenever we cover any topic, we just don't cover it for the sake of completing it, but to make sure that we understand it in as simple terms as possible. Because I think there are only two types of things: one you understand and one you don't understand. The things you don't understand are hard, the things you already understand are easy, right? So nothing is hard or easy, it's just that you understand the basic concept, the whole idea or the bigger picture. And then, of course, the commands and configuration, that is something that comes with practice. Nobody expects you to remember all the commands all the time. What they do expect you to understand is the logic. So, for example, if they are talking about OSPF, what is different between OSPF and EIGRP routing protocol? Why one is called the distance vector routing protocol? For example, EIGRP, or other one is the link state routing protocol. What is the core difference between these two? If you have to implement one of the routing protocols in my organization, and if I hire you as a consultant or ask you your opinion, what your opinion will be based on. So if you know the difference between these two types, you will be able to answer them. Nobody will ask you to tell you the command of how do you configure, how do you inject a default route in OSPF. Yes, they would ask you this question maybe into the exam, and of course for exam you prepare specifically. But when you go to the day-to-day work, or when you later go for implementation, you see that you don't need to remember all the commands. What you need to remember is to understand the differences between them, right? All right, so I see a question from MNL, which I'll answer when we come to the CKNP part. So the live Zoom sessions will be there, and then of course we will also have the practice lab for every topic. So not only to solidify your understanding of the topic, but also to become comfortable with CLI, because ultimately most of the configuration in Cisco is command line based, except when you go for SD-WAN or any software defined networking implementation like SDA, you have more GUI based configuration. But the core technologies, routing, switching, even programming like Python coding and everything, or if you are using curl for sending any API request. All these are still CLI based. So having a solid understanding and configuration practice will help you a lot. So how does the practice lab work? I will give you more detail later, but basically every week I'll send you a PDF, which is a set of instructions. Configure router 1 with OSPF, make sure there's a neighborship with router 2, or configure STP between these switches. So depending on the technology, there will be different instructions. And based on those instructions, you will have to configure the topology. And the topology will be into our software, EVNG, where we have virtualized routers and switches, so that you can have many routers and switches to practice and have different kind of connectivity between them, right? So there will be an instruction PDF, and also along with that I will send you the solution PDF, so that you have exact solution what you need to configure to get that result. Because remember, for the next 12 weeks when we go through the zero to CCNA, you have to change your mindset from testing yourself to learning. Switch it to learning. Just open your mind and learn. So anytime you don't know something, don't get demotivated. Actually, get excited that okay, something new is there which I don't know. That means I'm going to learn it now, and that means I will know about it from this point onward. So you have to have an open mindset. So when I'm teaching in the live Zoom section, of course you are learning, and that time everyone has a learning mindset. But when I send the labs to you, it's not a test. I'm not testing what you learn into the live Zoom session. Do you remember it? Do you recall it? Can you configure it without any issues? No, that's not the objective. The objective is, again, as I mentioned, to solidify your understanding what you learn into the live Zoom session, even to the next level. So when you're doing the lab, feel free to check the solution file as many times as you want. Feel free to contact me if you get stuck somewhere, or if you don't know exactly uh, why the solution file is in that way. So when you have these kind of options, you will see that you have a mindset of learning and you are not testing yourself. So if you don't understand something, or if you don't remember the command, feel free to check it, because right now you are still learning even when you are doing the practice labs. These are not test labs, right? So don't test yourself. Just make sure that you have a habit of doing configuration. Even if you are looking at the solution file and typing it, that's fine. Subconsciously, your mind is registering everything, your brain is registering everything, right? So apart from this, in every live Zoom session, after the session will be finished, there will be a Q&A session where if you have any questions, you can ask me. And if you have any doubts about the technical part of the configuration, you can ask me, and I'll be more than happy to answer those questions. And as I mentioned, along with the practice lab, I do send the detailed solution file for the practice lab, so that you always have that ready in case if you get stuck, you immediately switch to the practice lab solution file, and make sure you understand exactly why the solution is the way it is, right? Again, it's not a test. It is again to understand the technology more. Applied concept, basically. And of course, where do you practice all these things? So the software that we use is EVNG, and I'll explain you a little bit more about it. So all the necessary software information and the download link I will send you. And I think I already sent you the Dropbox link to download the EVNG. And it already has the pre-set up topology. So the OVA file that you import into the VMware, it already has all the pre-set up topologies for doing the practicals. And the reason is because we don't want to waste time into connecting devices and setting up things when we need to concentrate on the technology. But having said that, if you are interested into just trying to how do we connect routers, how do we connect switches, you can create new labs or new topologies also inside EVNG. You can find many videos also on YouTube how to create a new topology. You just click on new and then drag and drop the routers or switches and then just connect them, and it will be same as what I have sent you. But what I have sent you is important because all the PDFs or the practice labs that I'm going to send you will be depending or will be based on those topologies. But apart from that, on your own, if you want to create more, you can definitely do that. It is possible to create n number of topologies in EVNG, right? And of course, we want to make sure that we not only understand the technology, we understand everything, we become comfortable with hands-on, but ultimately, some of us also we want to pass the exam, right? So our goal is to pass the CCNA exam and then move on to CCNP and so on, right? So there will be exam preparation also with the practice questions, because remember, understanding something and becoming very good with the configuration and the concepts is one thing, and then passing the exam is a completely different thing. The reason I say that is because the way Cisco asks question, the way Cisco construct a question into the exam, these are multiple choice questions, drag and drop questions, and selecting more than one answers when it seems like all of them are wrong or all of them are right. So how do you actually go through that? You need practice for that as well. Everything comes with the practice, right? So everything becomes better with the practice. So you also need the exam preparation, which is also included in this challenge, so that you can actually check yourself. And this is actual testing part. So as I was telling you, you don't need to test anything uh, when you are doing the labs. But when you are doing the questions, you can test yourself because you have learned those things. And of course, there also we will have solution with the explanation. So you can check if your answer is correct or not, or if not, then you can go back and just polish your those skills again. Having said that, you can see an asterisk there. The reason I put an asterisk or a star there is because exam preparation does not start until we are already at least halfway through the course. So let's say if we are 6 7 weeks in, then we will start giving you the exam questions, because it makes sense to do it once you have enough knowledge of the routing and switching or the basic core part, so that you can start doing at least those questions. Start giving you question right from day one doesn't make any sense, because we need to make sure that first we have the understanding and then we get to that particular part, right? So that will happen around you can say 6 or 7 weeks into the class, and then we will do it. So I see a question from Arun. Should we be ready to pass the CCNA by May? So if you go through all the concepts that I'm going to teach you and the practice labs, if you do them properly, and of course exam preparation that we provide, if you do that, definitely you will be ready to pass the exam by the end of this course, by the end of 12 weeks. You can say like maybe one more week after that to go through the questions again one more time. But yeah, with that, you should be ready to pass the exam at that point, right? And next thing is that when you are this what makes this course unique is that we do have the multi-protocol labs also for the 0 to lab. So this part doesn't apply to 0 to CCNA, but if you decide to go further with us all the way to CCIE, you will see that we have the multi-protocol labs for in-depth switching, in-depth routing, uh, software-defined WAN, and network programmability. So all these are covered. So you have the exam like multi-protocol labs. They are called multi-protocol because you use a big topology and you configure all the technologies there. So you configure routing, switching, DMVPN, MPLS, SD-WAN, QoS, multicasting. Everything is configured on the same lab. So it's like a build-up of the configuration starting from scratch all the way to the complete working lab end to end. So these are also provided and explained. I will also solve this lab in front of you in the live Zoom session to show you how exactly it is done, and then you guys will follow it. But this is something you will get into CCI part. But this is also something that is that's what makes this course unique, right? Because other solutions we see they do provide multi-protocol labs, but they just leave it with you. But here I will be there as well with you to solve everything, making sure everything is clear, why it is done and how it is done, right? And of course, lifetime access to the session recordings. So you will see that for 0 to CCNA, there are different topics that we cover. So you might not get the same recording as we are doing, but because the topic is same and the configuration and the teaching that I do is same, you will get the recording of that on our 0 to CCNA portal. It might be from a previous class, but it will be the same class, 0 to CCNA. So you will get all the information, necessary information into those recordings, and you will have lifetime access to these recordings. So in case if you miss a topic and you want to cover it, or maybe you did join the live session but you want to go through again with the recordings, you can definitely go and check it out on our 0 to CCNA portal, right? So anybody who has any issue with accessing 0 to CCNA portal or want to get the information about your credentials, get in touch with Christian and he will set you up for that, right? So that's the unique part about overall course, the 13 to 14 months course that we have. But let's talk about specifically Zero to CCNA, the first part that we are going to do, Zero to CCNA challenge, right? So what is the course structure for this? So this one will be 2 times a week. We will be having these sessions twice in the weekend, as according to our program in Bangkok timing. It is actually Saturday and Sunday in the morning, but I think back in US it will be Friday and Saturday evening, and it will be 1.5 to 2 hours per session, depending on the technology. Some technologies need more explanation, more conceptual information. It might go slightly even more than 2 hours sometimes, and sometimes it might be on only 1.5 hours. So it is actually topic driven, not uh, the time driven course, right? So whatever the topic we have in hand, we make sure that that is completely understood and we are comfortable with that, including the Q&A session, and then we finish the session for that day. And the live Zoom sessions that you will have with me, in that session, I'm going to explain you the concept, and I will also show you the lab configuration. So for example, just to give you an example, let's say we start spanning tree protocol. Now you have absolutely no idea, for example, what is STP. You have never heard of it. I want to make sure I start from that point. So even if you have never heard about STP, we make sure that you start from there and we go all the way to the level that is needed on not only for CCNA exam, but also to comfortably manage it in a network environment if you are a T1 engineer somewhere, right? Tier 1 engineer. So we will also follow the concepts with the configuration of labs. So the same lab that I'm going to send you that week, I'm going to solve that lab here into the live Zoom session. You will see me configuring it, and of course I will not be quiet while configuring. I will be explaining everything what I'm doing, and then there will be a Q&A session. You can ask me questions, and then I will send you that lab, which you can do it on your laptop or desktop with the EVNG software. It will be the same lab, because again, it's not a test. We just want to make sure you also practice it. I'll send you the solution file as well. So if you have a question which comes to your mind later, you can definitely ask me anytime during the week as well, right? So live Zoom sessions will be not only with the theory, but the practical as well. So this is going to be a 12 weeks course, but one thing we have made sure is that we don't want to compromise on any of the topics. So just because, first thing is that most of the CCNA courses you will see are 1 week courses. They are boot camps. In 5 days, they teach you everything, and then you are out. And if you haven't been in touch with all these technologies, nobody is in touch with everything, right? We always work in production in something. So it becomes very difficult to capture everything, retain everything in 5 days, 7 days boot camp. So the first thing is that we wanted to space it out to make sure that you have time to breathe and to practice on yourself and have your doubts, get them answered. But not only that, there is another bonus here, is that if we feel at the end of 12 weeks that there are few things which I need to explain you more, we are actually don't mind going even 13 or 14 weeks, because the objective is to make sure that you have all the necessary knowledge. And again, it is topic driven course, not the time driven course, right? As I mentioned earlier. So in this course, we will go through in-depth theory. We make sure that we understand the topic before we get to the lab. So then we will have multiple practical labs also. For every week, we will have the labs for the sessions for the topics that we cover that week. And as I mentioned earlier already, labs PDF will be sent after the session along with the solution file. And we will have the completely hands-on approach, because right within the live Zoom session, I'm going to configure the lab for you guys as well, so that we dive into the configuration right from the very beginning. After the few initial theoretical topics like IP addressing and subnetting, we immediately dive into practical part. And these are EVNG based topologies. EVNG is the virtualization software that we use to virtualize routers and switches and create topology. And this is something also I'm going to provide you, right? So speaking of EVNG, I have shared an email with you guys with the OVA. So our existing students already have the 0 to CCNA OVA, so they can skip it. But new students, you can actually download that OVA, and you need to install it into VMware. You can need to import it into VMware, right? So when you import this into VMware, you will see that the topologies are already set into EVNG, and the OVA file will cover everything. So you don't need anything else. You just need that OVA file to download from the link I sent you. In the same link, you will also see another very tiny software called the EVNG Windows Client Pack. Very important to install that as well. so that you can already have the necessary client-side software to access the terminal window of your routers and switches, right? So you will see that if you are using a laptop or a desktop, I would recommend to have at least 8 gig of RAM. If you have less than that, it might be slightly slower, but 8 gig RAM is perfect for this platform. So if you have a desktop or a laptop, and if you have a Windows machine, that will be preferred, because Windows machine work pretty stable in these cases. If you have a Mac OS or Linux machine, then you have to check yourself how you can install VMware. And once VMware is set up, you can actually import the OVA. Or if you are not using VMware, you can use the other solutions also. But for that, we will not be able to provide you support, because we also deal mostly with the VMware only, right? In case if you need. So if you already have VMware, then yes, it's perfectly fine. You just need to import the OVA into that VMware. That will be the only thing you will need, right? And remember, after you import the OVA in VMware, make sure that you adjust the RAM requirement, because it might be different from what I have set initially. So you can set it to 8 gig if you want, or if you have more, you can set it to more. And then make sure that your network type is set to NAT. What happens is that you will always get a consistent IP address in this way. It is going to use your computer's network to get out to the internet in case if it needs to, right? So for example, if you go to the virtual machine setting after importing it, just make sure the network adapter is selected to NAT, and the memory is set to whatever you want, like 4 gig, 8 gig. 8 gig is recommended, but you can have more if you have more. Like I have 128 gigs, so I just use 32 gig here. But to be honest, for CCNA level, you don't need more than 8 gig. That should be more than sufficient, right? By the way, if you want to know how exactly to use EVNG, like how to import OVA, after that, how you start it, how you connect to the routers, how you connect to its terminal, there is a detailed video on our Zero to CCNA web portal. So you can definitely watch that video. But just to show you that once you open EVNG, once you open VMware and you boot the EVNG, you will get a screen something like this, right? So in this screen, you can see that it is saying EVNG, default root password is Eve, and it is showing you an IP address. In your case, the IP address will be different, and then it shows you a login screen. So you don't need to log in here actually. You don't need to log in. You just need to note down this IP that shows up here, right? And if you have set the network interface type NAT, then it should show up here. If you don't see an IP, just try to restart the VMware or restart the EVNG, and then it should show up an IP address here. Once you see the IP address, you don't need to log in. But in case if you need to log in, the username is root and the password is Karotul. So I'll send you guys if you need the credentials to log in for any reason. Mostly you don't need to log in here. You just need to note down the IP, and then you open this IP address into you note down the IP address into any of your browsers. So like here 192.168.79.130. When you press enter, it is actually going to show you this screen. First time, it will ask you for the username password. So for the web browser GUI version of EVNG, the username is not root, it is admin, and the password is EVE or EVE, which you see here, EVE, right? So when you get in, you will see some pre-loaded topologies for our CCNA different labs. For example, switching, we will use 0 to CCNA. For routing, we will use 0 to CCNA routing. Then for OSPF, certain OSPF topics, you will use a different topology. And then for BGP, you will use different. DNS, DSCP, you will use different. So you, depending on every week's PDF, the very first line in the PDF will be something like this: open 0 to CCNA routing topology, and then start configuring it, right? So it will tell you which topology you need to open. There are some others also which I had added later. You will not see that in your OVA. You will see all the necessary files right there. So when you open a particular topology, you click on that and you click on open. It open the topology, and mostly we will be using this topology where we have 3 branches: branch 1, branch 2, and branch 3. Branch 1 has one router 1, and 3 switches, and then 4 computers. Similarly, branch 2 has one router, 2 switches, and 4 computers. And branch 3 has just one switch and 4 routers. and this router 3 in the middle is connecting all the branches to each other, right? That's the connecting link. So don't worry about the specifics. Don't worry even if you don't understand what exactly these links are or how why one is router, one is switch. These things will be covered later, or the VLAN you see. All these things will be covered. I just wanted to show you that the topology will look something like this. And if you go through the video on the 0 to CCNA portal for EVNG, you will understand exactly how to start the devices and how do you just click on the device to open the putty or super putty, and then you will get the CLI access, something like this, right? So all these things you can actually check it out there. All right, let me. All right, so we are talking about EVNG. Now, what topics are we going to cover in CCNA? So CCNA, we are going to go through all the topics which are there into the curriculum. So you will see that we will start with the basics of networking and IPv4 addressing and subnetting, which is very important. Then the switching concepts, VLANs, PTP, EtherChannel, STP, router basic configuration, introduction to router and how to connect to the router using telnet or secure shell, static and default routing. We'll also cover OSPF version 2. So they have removed EIGRP and RIP from CCNA. So they no longer ask you any RIP or EIGRP questions. But for the sake of completeness, we are going to cover EIGRP and RIP also, although they are not into the exam. But they are very good to understand the contrast between OSPF and those routing protocols. So it becomes easier to understand OSPF more if you learn those as well. So we will not spend much time on those, but at least the basics of those things will be covered. IPv6, and then there are different IP services like GIE, NET, NTP, etc. We will cover all these. Again, they are not expecting you to be an expert of these technologies because it's on the CCNA level. So you should know the basic idea and some basic configuration of these things. So that's what we are going to cover. Security features, including the layer 2, including the ACLs and layer 2 security features that we can configure like TSCP snooping, ARP inspection, source card. So those things will be covered in security features part to secure your network basically. Wireless basics will be covered as well because wireless is a very important part of exam. Because wireless is always a part of the infrastructure of your network, right? And nowadays they call this CCNA not routing and switching CCNA, they call it the infrastructure CCNA or enterprise infrastructure CCNA. So wireless is also important to understand the basics. And virtualization basics, virtualization, how does it work, what is hypervisor, and these things will be covered. And of course, finally, the automation and programmability basics. So we need to understand again, only the basics are covered because on CCNA level, they don't expect you to be an expert of automation or programmability. But what are the different terms they use like SDN, northbound API, southbound API? What do they actually mean by a controller? And what are the different kind of network programming languages and network programming protocols like RESTCON, NetConf? What do we mean by those? And Ansible, Puppet, Chef, what are these configuration managers? So these introductions, so that if you don't know what are these things, you will have a good understanding. And some of these we will also see the practical, some part of it which is possible to do the practical configuration, right? So we will see that part as well. So these are the core topics of CCNA that we are going to cover. And then, of course, for the CCNA exam, when you go for the CCNA exam, the exam code currently active is 200-301. And in this one you get a 2 hours exam. If you are from a non-native English speaking country, you get 30 minutes extra, but mostly if you are English speaking from English speaking country, you get 2 hours, 120 minutes. And the question types will be multiple choice questions, drag and drop questions, tables matching, and simulations has the highest weight because these are the configuration questions where you click on the device and you have to configure something or you have to type some commands. And that's where all the hands-on that we will do will come into handy because it will make you very comfortable in configuring these things, right? But of course, they have more weight. Doesn't mean the other things have no weight. Still, we need to make sure we understand and practice MCQs, drag and drop. That's where the exam preparation part of this course comes very, very handy. And you will see once we start that after the half of the course, that will really start giving you a lot of confidence. And by the end of this course, you will be very comfortable to take the exam. In exam, you will see around 50 to 60 questions, depending on what set they give you. and that means you get roughly 2 minutes around to solve one question. Now, most of the MCQs you will be able to solve within 5 to 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds. So you do get that extra time saved, which is crucial to keep on saving that extra time, because when it comes to simulations, it will take some time to configure simulation and do things. So managing your time, again, you should have the higher weightage given to simulations time wise also, and you should try to do the other questions as fast as possible, not taking your complete 2 minutes for a simple MCQ, right? All right, so that was the CCNA. That's how we will start, and I think this is going to be very exciting journey for you guys and for me as well, and very informative as well. But of course, if you become CCNA and you think that yes, I'm feeling on a roll and I would like to go further and want to do CCNP as well, so this course will continue actually after 12 weeks. Anybody who enrolls into CCNP as well, and this one is also going to be very in depth, where we are going to cover one core exam, which is NCORE. And by the way, the NCORE exam of CCNP also works as a CCI qual exam, qualification exam. That means if you want to take the CCI lab in the future, you need to pass the NCORE exam. Then only you can book the CCI lab. Without passing NCORE exam, it won't allow you to even show you the slots, opening slots for any CCI exam booking. So NCORE is the prerequisite for that, and you need to pass one elective exam, which is NRC. And NRC is a routing switching exam, so routing switching infrastructure exam. That's why I think one of the question Emmanuel was asking, that is there any reason why we go with NRC first and then NCORE? And the reason is because we are going in a role, right? We are going through CCNA, where we cover routing and switching, and then it becomes very easy to move to another routing switching topic, but in more detail. Like you will get the OSPF, but in more in depth. STP, more in depth, or sorry, not STP, EIGRP, more in depth. Network address translation, more in depth. So you see that more all the topics that we learn for routing, they will be more in depth, and they will be very familiar to what you already done. That's why NRC is what we will start with. But then when we go to the NCORE, it is more about software defined networking like SDA, SD-WAN, programmability, automation, and the basic switching. So that's actually very good to do just before you move to CCI. So that's why NCORE is the last thing we do. You pass the NCORE exam and then you are ready to book the lab. So then you can join the CCI course. And by the way, after you pass the NCORE exam, you get 3 years. Within 3 years, you can book the lab anytime. So it's a NCORE actually remains active for 3 years. So as long as it is active, you can book lab anytime. So you don't need to book it immediately next month. Definitely you won't be prepared. You need to prepare at least for 5-6 months for CCI, and then you can book the lab exam, right? But speaking of CCNP, to pass the CCNP certification or to become CCNP, Cisco Certified Networking Professional, you need to pass both exams. The core exam is must, and one elective exam, which we have chosen NRC because that aligns with the routing and switching pathway. So NCORE exam or 350-401, it is called Implementing and Operating Cisco Enterprise Network Core Technologies. And NRC is the Cisco Enterprise Advanced Routing and Services. So that's why we go with NRC first, right? And I will be providing you separate OVS for this one. If you decide to join for CCNP, you will see that the 0 to CCNA OVA or the topology, it will not be same for these topics. I will give a separate OVA for these whenever we start these topics, right? Now, what will be the class structure? It will be same because the same class will just roll over to CCNP after this, 2 times a week, live Zoom sessions, 12 weeks for NRC and 12 weeks for NCORE. Again, in-depth theory, multiple practical labs, PDF will be provided along with the solution file, hands-on approach, EVNG-based topology with a new OVA that I provide, and of course, lifetime access to the session recordings. So all the good things you get in 0 to CCNA, they carry forward to CCNP as well, right? Now, talking about NRC topics, again, because we are starting with CCNA, so you don't need to worry too much about the details of these topics. We will talk again about this when we start CCNP. But just to quickly go through layer 3 technologies, troubleshooting, PBR, VRF Lite, BFT, bidirectional forwarding detection, routing protocols, EIGR, QSPF, and BGP, VPN technologies, MPLS, DMVPN, infrastructure security, where we go through ACLs and control plane policing and all these things. infrastructure services, which is again net, NTP, and SNMP, net flow. All these things will be there. Encore, on the other hand, you will see it is more about the SDN. So you can see architectural difference between traditional networks, software-defined WAN, software-defined access, wireless infrastructure. What is the differences between them? Quality of service, virtualization, layer 3 concepts and routing basic, because they are already covered in depth into NRC. Wireless fundamentals, IP services, and network assurance. Network assurance is where you do SNMP, NetFlow, and SD-WAN and SDA network assurance or monitoring, basically device monitoring part of it, using RESTCON and NetConf protocols also to perform these services. And wired and wireless security. Security, how we can configure WPA2 security, or in wired network, what .1x security, how can you secure your perimeter. You will learn into these topics, right? Don't worry about these. If you are completely new, these things will become easier to understand once you pass your CCNA, and these things will make more sense once you start getting into the CCNP, right? This is just I wanted to show you for the complete plan or the pathway for up to the CCIE. And of course, automation, where we go into the little bit more detail of, about automation, like Python coding and using RESTconf and NetConf modules inside the Python module to configure routers using Python program. And then comes the father of all of these, Zero to Lab, where we go to the CCIE and the definitive class to prepare for CCIE Enterprise Infrastructure exam. This is going to be 24 weeks after CCNP is finished. And this will also be the same structure 2 times a week. And here we will have single protocol lab, just like I will give you for CCN and CCNP, where we cover the core topics, including the SD-WAN and programmability as well. So we will have OVS for those as well. And then, of course, we have the multi-protocol labs as well, where we cover everything into the same lab, like all the routing technologies or all the SD-WAN and SDA technologies. I will also explain you the basics of Python, and we'll create some programs to manage the network infrastructure. And we will also use something called on-box Python, which is using the Cisco CSR router and configuring Python module right within the box to query the box and or to configure the box. For example, you can shut down a port and make sure that if anybody enables this port, it should be automatically shut down again, because it should remain shut down. Or if somebody tries to remove BGP configuration, that command should be ignored, and a warning message should be given on the terminal screen, and an email should be sent to the administrator. So these kind of fun things we will do when we get to that level. And of course, we will have the Q&A session and the trainer assistance in this case as well, because it is the CCIE. So we want to make sure accuracy is the first thing we get. We become accurate into all the technologies that we are configuring, right? And of course, just like everything else, here also you have lifetime access and a separate OVA file. About myself, I think I already introduced myself initially, but just to let you know, I have done my CCIE twice, once in routing and switching and once in service provider. And both times when I was preparing for these things, I was also teaching at the same time. So I was teaching CCNP, and then I did my CCIE, started teaching CCIE routing switching, and then prepared for service provider. And then while teaching routing switching, I passed service provider exam. And after that, I have moved to other certifications also, like I have done Juniper, JNCIA, JNCIS, and JNCIP as well. Into SD-WAN, I have done the Silver Peak certifications, which I think I have now taken over by Aruba HP. And I also done some firewall certifications and different implementation using those firewalls, especially the ASA firewall and Linux implementation. So Linux Nginx HTTPS implementation or web server implementation, and the basics of basic configuration of Linux. So I have 16 years of total training experience. Mostly my expertise lie into Cisco, but I have ventured into other fields as well. And I do have practical experience as well as a consultant to various organizations, so that, as I mentioned earlier, I can include those experiences into the training material as well. And my training is a passion. It's a cliche, I know, but to be honest, what happens is that whenever someone a student or a client doesn't understand a particular concept, and if I am able to explain them and they have that aha moment, yes, now I get it and it makes more sense, that actually gives me also the same pleasure that the student is having, that okay, I understood this concept, and I become happy because I can actually explain something which can be very, very beneficial for them in their practical and in their professional life. So that's why I like teaching, I like training. So I have worked extensively into practical production environment as well, and I could have just done completely that. But to be honest, I feel more joy when I do the uh, when I do this work or the training work, right? All right, so let's talk about some of the frequently asked questions, because you guys might also have some questions, so maybe they will be answered here. And then, of course, we will take some questions from you guys as well after this. So we are almost at the end. So some questions I get all the time from students, like, do I need previous networking knowledge? So this is something I already mentioned, that this particular course doesn't expect you to have any previous networking knowledge. We will start from what is networking. So tomorrow will be the basics of networking. But of course, if you have done something before, like some of you mentioned, you did some networking certifications before, or you worked into NOC and all, that definitely is good. That everything what you know is going to just solidify your understanding. But not having that is not going to be an issue, right? Will my PC support the EVNG software? So yes, EVNG is actually a software which runs under, it's actually a Linux operating system which runs under or inside VMware. So VMware Workstation or VMware Workstation Player, which is a free software, is supported by all Windows machines. I think Linux or Mac OS also supported. So you can definitely use it. And nowadays, all the laptops or desktops do have at least 8 gig of RAM. Even 4 gig of RAM, you can run it and you can do the labs. But for more smooth experience, you should go with the 8 gig option, right? So is joining live session mandatory? So one thing you will see is that whatever you expect from this course, we are going to provide you more than what you expect. And we expect from you only one thing, is to just show up in the live session. Because what happens is that it might feel overwhelming to see so many different things that you need to do, but actually you just need to do one thing. From today, if you forget everything what I told you and just want to remember one thing, just remember this: I have to show up for the live Zoom session. Why? Because when you join the live Zoom session, you actually see me explaining the concept and also see me doing the configuration, and that gives you a particular motive. Okay, I also want to do the similar configuration, and then when I send you the lab, you will get the motivation to do it on your own. When you say that, okay, I will watch the video later, maybe I don't want to join it, unless you have a real reason not to join, that's fine. Sometimes it happens with me also, I get stuck and need to cancel. But the thing is that if you can, then it's better to join the live Zoom session, because that gives you uh, extra motivation and the psychological shift also to do the practical yourself as well, right? Will there be a new practice lab every week? Yes. Initially, like for example, this week we don't have any practice lab, and next week also we will have just the IP addressing and subnetting, so it will be theoretical. So it's a good thing, because the initial couple of weeks you can make sure everything is set up properly. Your EVNG is working fine. You don't have any issues. You can get in touch with me if you have any issues. Uh, but after that, yes, every week we will have a couple of topics, and I'll be sending you 2 labs, one for each topic, right? So there will be practice labs every week. What if I get stuck in a lab and can't find the solution? So there are a few things you can do. For example, you join the live Zoom session, and let's say I'm covering today Ether channel. So you understand what is Ether channel. You see me do the lab, and then the Zoom session is done. I send you the PDF along with the solution file. So whenever you get time during the week when we don't have the Zoom session, you start doing the configuration and you get stuck. So what do you do the first? The very first thing you should do is to immediately check the solution file. Why did you not get the result? Check if you did the configuration correctly. Because it's not a test, you are still learning. You can definitely do that. Make sure everything is correct according to the solution file. And sometimes what may happen is that you might have a question about solution file. Why the solution is like this in this particular way? I want to have a little bit explanation. So in that case, you can contact me and you can ask me. Now the question is, how do you contact me? So we have a Facebook group for our Karatul organization where you can actually post your question. And not only me, but there are other very knowledgeable people and our old students who are there. They can actually, will be more than happy to answer you. And another benefit is that maybe you have the doubt, but other will also benefit from your question to see the solution for that. So that will be the preferred way. If you can go to the forum and then ask there on the on the Facebook, or of course you can send me an email. Uh, you can reply to my emails that I have sent you, and then you can ask me question there with the details of maybe screenshot what you are facing, and definitely I'll be more than happy to answer your question there. Right? Now, how do I prepare for the exam? So this is something we got you covered in Zero to CCNA challenge. Once we reach to the halfway mark, after that we will start slowly giving you the practice questions to do according to the topics what we have already covered, and you will start doing them. And how we give you the question is not we just don't send you the questions. We will actually explain you the solution why it is like that, so that you have the complete understanding. So you have the knowledge from our live Zoom sessions, and now you see the question related to that, and then you see my explanation again why the solution is like that. So that's the complete picture, and that way you get prepared for the exam, right? So by the end of this course, you should have all the practice questions that you need to feel comfortable. Again, remember, this is just to prepare you for the exam. Doesn't mean these are the latest questions. And anyway, we are not into that business, right? That we just provide you the question, cram it and pass the exam. That's not the objective, right? The objective is to understand every technology. That's why there will be an explanation also for every question, so that you become more and more comfortable and more knowledgeable about the technologies when you go through this, which will make you more than prepared for the exam. Even if they change the question in the exam, you will be able to copy it and cop up with it, and you will be able to solve the question, right? Next thing, will I have opportunity to ask questions during live session? Yes. So in the live session, you can, while I am actually presenting, that time I will mute all of you. So you can send me your question into the chat, or after the my live session is finished and I will show you the lab that is finished. I will allow you to unmute again, and then you can ask me question that time. It will be a short Q&A session at the end. In case if you remember something later after the Zoom session is finished, again, you can ask on the Facebook group or send me an email, right? What if I have a doubt during the week when there is no live session? So yeah, this is the same thing. You can post on the Facebook group, or you can send me an email. Will this course be enough to pass the exam? Absolutely. Yes, we will cover everything you need to know. And if there are some very theoretical topics which we don't have any practical at all, and I feel like just watching a video will be enough for that, we do have our pre-recorded videos also for all these topics, or maybe some very basic networking topics which might not be into CCNA, like OSI model, TCP/IP model. You may want to know about them. We have those videos also freely available to you on the CCNA portal. So we have everything which is needed, including the exam preparation questions. So yes, this course will be more than enough for you to pass the exam. Now, will this course be enough to move to CCNP and then to CCIE? This is actually more than enough to move to CCNP. Actually, I always say that when we teach this CCNA course, it is like a CCNA plus. So you get a little bit of taste of CCNP as well. And once you are done with our Zero to CCNA, you are actually more than ready to get to CCNP and get to the next level. So yes, this will be more than enough for that, right? So that's it. Let's get started. Any questions? Let me know. And thank you. So let me allow you guys to unmute in case if you have any questions.